So for this, we're going to be using Jmac oil-based clay. It's a really pretty decent clay to work with. I'm putting a plastic bag just so I don't have to use as much clay. I take the clay, put it in the microwave, and you can see how liquidy it becomes. And then I can just start putting it on the armature. I just have a very rudimentary armature in there just to kind of hold up the clay. And then I just let the clay drip onto that. And then within a few seconds, it is pretty darn hard and it sticks. So using the features, I brush in where I think the eyes, the nose are. And the eyes are a little bit high, but I tend to add a little bit more skull on top to fix this issue. And just having some general anatomical knowledge, you know where things are going to be. One of the things I have struggled in the past was getting the likeness in sculpture. And this year, one of the things I intend to do is do many more sculptures, many more portraits. So I fast forwarded a little bit. You can start to see it looks human at this point. So at this point, you have to kind of figure out really the lines. I'm kind of drawing in where the temples are. I'm drawing in where the ears, the top of the ears, and the bottom of the ears are. But getting the exact likeness always eludes me. So you have to be very specific in where you place the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, all in relation to one another. And if you've ever done any portrait drawing, you'll see that if you're just a little bit off, then it's a bad likeness. So you have to be almost exact. And it helps to have many more references than I have for a portrait like this. So it it helps to have also a very good profile photo. And sometimes if you're going by reference online, it's difficult to get. Using a sharp flat tool, I like to keep all the planes of the head nice and flat. I also scoop in a little bit of the temple. I want to kind of emphasize the temple is pretty deep. And I also like the idea of showing all the bones of the skull. So now you can start to see it's starting to look a lot better. If you remove a lot of the imperfections, then you get the smoothness of the skin. But you can see I go back and forth. I start making the details again because I keep asking myself, does this part come out a little bit more or less? And I'm constantly doing that. I think one of the things that people have asked me in the past from previous sculpture videos is that why do you keep smoothing things out and then going over it again and adding rough detail? And I think the reason is that I can't figure out yet if it needs more a different kind of like level of height. So I go back and forth. For me, it's difficult getting the likeness, getting exactly what I want, and I don't want this kind of almost paint by numbers look. I really try to look hard at my subject. Even if I don't get the likeness, I still want it to have some sort of life to the sculpture. And oftentimes, if you're just going artificially with the anatomy and then just adding the muscle on top of the bone, you don't get that breath of life that I want to get from sculptures. At least that is my goal. And often I have seen sculptures look a little bit robotic. So that's why I keep going back and forth with detail. So those lines that I just drew are the shapes of the hair and where the sideburns go down. His forehead is very high and it kind of starts to swoop back. So always keep that in mind. And because this is on an armature, I can tilt the head back and I can start to see the shapes of the head from down below. Normally with water-based clay, once it gets a little bit hard, it's very difficult to tilt the head and work from underneath. But with oil-based clay like this Jmac clay, it's very easy. You don't have to like worry about your work drying out. There is a really nice thing about these oil-based clays. The water-based clays are great. They give you like the most painterly feel to sculpture and quite a bit of flexibility, but the oil-based clay is nice because you don't have to like wet it. You don't have to keep anything wet. You just leave it in the room. So in a way, I do like it for that, but I do miss the flexibility of the clay being a little bit harder and a little bit softer at the same time. So I'm indicating where the hair is. Hair is very difficult to do on a sculpture. You have to figure out where the origin is and where it ends, and you clump it together. So don't try to like sculpt strands of hair. It just doesn't really work very well in sculpture. At this point, you have to figure out where you want the model to look. I tend to put the eyes in the middle just in the beginning, but I like the portraits to look either to the side or up and down, and that's going to give it a whole different look. This tool that I'm using, I made myself out of like some wire, and it creates a little bit of a texture, but it blends the muscle forms together, so it's a lot nicer. And for this sort of like rough portrait, I'm doing this mostly as an exercise because I just want to get the practice of sculpting heads more. I haven't had enough portrait sculpture experience in a long time, so but this tool works great and it's small, it fits in all the sections that we want. So using a smaller tool, you can get in the eyes and kind of figure out the direction that he's looking. And you aim to put the eyes looking one side or the other. It creates a little bit more drama. And now I'm going to concentrate a little bit on the hair. He's got quite a nice full head of hair, and hair is always difficult to do. The ear also has some challenges. I'm not really trying to finish this too much. The idea is just to get some nice practice and just kind of get the head. I removed the top part of the head because I did not want to have too much oil clay. Oil clay is very expensive, so I added some plastic on top, and then I'm just going to cover it with the oil-based clay because he needs a whole lot more hair. So I'm just going to add a bunch of hair on top, and then I will there we go with the hair. The hair has got definitely a character of its own. It's fuller in the front and kind of tapers off towards the back part. You just kind of have to figure out, like, if you don't want to add too much body to the hair, otherwise it looks like a wig. And you have to figure out where it draws, or where it like stops, and kind of cut it there. I'm going to add some details of where the hair begins, but here I added a little bit too much, so I need to cut a little bit towards the back. That's going to give it a little bit more realistic feel because the front hairs are kind of ending at the middle of the head, and then the back of the hair is going to kind of comb down to the back. So this is just a rough sculpture, and I wanted to kind of get the portrait done, but I don't intend on finishing this, and I don't intend on making a cast out of it. This was just a little bit of a trial, but in the future I plan on doing more of these, so stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.